Immigrant communities are paying close attention right now as there are reports of increased ICE activity across the country, including in some places here in Georgia. So we're going to turn right now to immigration attorney Jamene Christian with JustAnswer.com, who has been with us a number of times, helping us make sense of and break down immigration policy and the law that undergirds it. Jamene is back with us again. Jamene, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me back, Zach.
So let's start with this. We've seen some scattered reports around the country. What exactly is going on and where is it happening?
Okay, so if we're talking about ICE at the airports, and that's what's the news of the day, TSA and ICE entered into an agreement back in May of last year where TSA is sharing travelers' information with ICE. And what they're doing is they're doing targeted pickups at ICE at U.S. airports. So we're thinking about 15 airports. They're not releasing where because they don't want you to know, but definitely here in Atlanta, San Francisco, LAX, Chicago, and they're going in and they're taking into custody people with expired visas and pending applications.
When you say targeted in the sense of it's at these certain airports, this list of 15 that according to you, we know a few of it, we don't know the full list, or targeted in the sense of specific individuals are being sought by immigration authorities when and if they go to and try to make their way through TSA at these airports?
The latter. So absolutely, they are having that information that they're receiving from TSA, so they know your name. TSA is sharing that information with ICE. They see if you have an expired visa, if you are in removal proceedings, so they know who you are, they know where you will be, and they're literally showing up at the airport looking for John Doe, going to the gate, checking their paperwork, looking at the photographs, seeing the person in the terminal, and then taking them into custody.
Let me ask you this question from both perspectives, because obviously immigration policy, immigration law has been at the center of our national political discourse, and if you call it debate, I think would be a neutral term to describe it.
So.
It's an issue that has got heated perspectives on both sides of the aisle. Let me ask you from this angle first, is it legal for ICE, for immigration authorities, to do that?
Absolutely. If you are out of status, you are out of status. You do not have a right to be in the United States. Airports are public spaces, right? So you don't need a warrant for the most part. And that's another reason why. You know, when we had the argument, well, you don't have a warrant. You don't have a right to be in my home. You don't have a right to be in my business. An airport, public space, government property for the most part. So they don't need a warrant. It's easier to do. They have the individual probable cause, and they take the person into custody, and it's fully legal.
And you have every reason to initiate that conversation as well, because anytime you want to get through the TSA security checkpoint, you've got to give up your ID.
Absolutely.
So that step is also, from the perspective of immigration enforcement, that box is checked, right?
Absolutely.
Let me ask you from the other perspective. I can imagine some conservatives may look at the situation and say, if your paperwork is in order, if you have abided by immigration law, you don't have anything to worry about here. Mm-hmm. Is that true, or is that a simplification of the matter?
I think it's a simplification because prior to this surge at the airports, if you had a pending asylum application, you did not have status, but you were waiting for an adjudication on your case. So people could travel domestically, and they are doing it by the law, right? I'm waiting for someone to make a decision on my case. So now I want to take a family trip to Disney World, right? And I'm going to do that through the airport. So technically, you are out of status. Technically, you can be removed. But prior to this surge, prior to this collaboration with TSA, you would not be interfered with by the government at all.
You're an immigration attorney. You have a good perspective on all of this that I think lay folks sometimes don't. You get to look behind the curtain a little bit as you're working with clients, as you're working in the space of the law. We hear anecdotally about a pretty substantial backlog in the time it takes from the initiation of any form of immigration legal work, whether it's removal proceedings or asylum applications or any kind of number of issues, to the point of final adjudication. Is that true? And if so, how big of a backlog is it?
That is absolutely true. When we're thinking about asylum, there are over 4 million cases waiting to be adjudicated. So
in the United States,
in the
4 million
4
plus
million,
people here in the United States.
And people who came in, right? Some without documentation, and you can, right? Because you're making a claim, persecution, you don't want to return. You come to the border and you're allowed in. Some people are here, they came in lawfully, and now there's war in their home countries, or laws have changed in their race, their gender, their sexuality, It's those topics, those areas are you're being heavily persecuted. They don't want to return, so you file an asylum application, and that's doing it legally. But there's a 4 million case backlog. So what I believe is happening now, it's just too many loopholes, and there are too many people here, according to the current administration. And now, because you technically do not have status, you are being detained. Now, you can still have an opportunity to go before an immigration judge, but you're kind of being fast-tracked.
You mentioned the judge aspect of this. I wonder, and at the risk of maybe getting too into the weeds here myself, but I think this is germane to what we're talking about. Is this backlog an issue of just a big surge all of a sudden in claims? Let's just talk about asylum, in asylum claims. Or is it a function of not having enough judges to keep up with the claims, or some combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. You do have people who have the opportunity to come here, don't wish to return for legitimate reasons, and of course, reasons that are not too legitimate, and knowing that they can indeed file for asylum and wait for that application to be adjudicated, and know that it will take a number of years, and you can get a work permit, and you can work lawfully. So it's a combination of both, and not having enough immigration judges, immigration officers to adjudicate these cases, and that's why we have the backlog.
What do clients tell you? What do folks who are working through the system tell you when you talk to them?
They throw up their hands. You know, they're looking for an answer. They're looking for immigration attorneys to fix something that we literally cannot fix, because we want people to know their rights. We don't want to teach them to avoid the law. We want them to understand the law. And sometimes we just have to tell them, based on existing immigration law and current policy, we're at a standstill. There's really not much we can do for you, but we can teach you on how to exist in this climate if you decide to stay here.
Let me ask you a big question here. You have a good perspective on all of this. You get to see it all from a kind of unique vantage point. You mentioned your conversations with clients, and right away you said they kind of throw up their hands. You wave a magic wand. How does this all get fixed?
Well, we have to go through Congress, right? We have to have a meeting of the minds, right, so to speak. We have to have people realize, people who make the rules, that we need immigrants. Immigrants are the foundation of the United States, but we need people to follow the law. We need to know who's here, because you do have to protect the homeland, but we have to find a path that we don't have families ripped apart at airports, have family members taken to far-flung places, and you have mixed status families where you have a U.S. citizen spouse and the other spouse, they have a pending application, and now they're no longer in the home, and now they're in Louisiana, they're in Lumpkin County, Georgia. So we have to have a way to do it humanely, to fix it so that the people who should not be here are not here, and the people who deserve to be here and can find a legal pathway to be here and remain here.
A couple last questions for you here, Jamene. You mentioned, split status families. Once somebody does get into removal proceedings, taken into immigration custody, and that legal saga begins, how long does it typically take from beginning to end?
Well, there are categories. You can have expedited removal. So if you're in the country for less than 2 years, you could be on a fast path right out of the country.
How long does that take?
That can take, well, we do have backlogs, right? It can take a matter of months. It can take a year. It could, because you're in custody and you're still waiting for your queue. For an immigration judge to adjudicate your case. But with expedited removal, for the most part, you don't get a chance to have an immigration judge adjudicate your case, right? But normally, if you are in removal proceedings, it can take a while, and sometimes you can be monitored, and you have to check in, so you have the ICE check-ins. So it depends on the jurisdiction you're in, how many cases are before you. There's really no time certain. So you have people really living in uncertainty.
And the last question for somebody who might be watching this who may have questions about their own status, the legality of their current status, what would you advise them to do if they do have those questions?
Okay, I always say this, we're immigration attorneys, we are officers of the court. We want people to know their rights. We don't want them to avoid the law. We want them to understand the law. So to understand the law, speak with an immigration attorney. JustAnswer.com, verified immigration attorneys are there to help you in the privacy of your own home, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Ask your questions, get your answers, and you know how to move in this climate.
All right, Jamene Christian, we always appreciate your perspective and your time helping us make sense of an issue that seems to be evolving sometimes by the day.
It is. Thank you, Zach.
Jamene, thank you as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you.